President Trump has been in office for less than a month, and already several of his executive actions have faced scrutiny in federal court. Now, judges have stopped the Trump administration from offering buyouts to federal workers, blocked the president's efforts to end birthright citizenship, and restricted Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE, from having access to Treasury Department systems. Now, on Sunday, Vice President J.D. Vance wrote in part on X, quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power." CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford joins us now. Jan, great to have you on the program.
Thanks.
I want to tap into your vast experience covering the justice system. How typical is it for the White House to push back on federal judges in this way? Because, look, I do remember there was the back and forth between the Biden administration and the courts over student loan forgiveness efforts. So how typical is something like this?
Well, okay, Kelly, I hate to say that anything Donald Trump does is typical, but setting that aside, I mean, you know, he's part of a long tradition in this country of presidents criticizing federal judges. I mean, you can go back to Jefferson, Lincoln, FDR. He literally tried to change the composition of the Supreme Court because he was so unhappy with the justices and their efforts to kind of stymie some of his programs. So, you know, this is typical. Judges, presidents criticize judges. They don't like some of their rulings. What would be atypical is if Trump were to somehow say, I don't like that ruling and I'm not going to follow it. I mean, that would be what we call a constitutional crisis. And we've seen some Democrats kind of throw around the idea that that's where we are right now. That is absolutely not true. We are not there yet. Trump is certainly not suggesting he's not going to follow some of these rulings that have gone against him in these initial stages so far. So right now, he's still in typical ground, I think, and we just kind of have to wait and see how some of this plays out.
Okay, I love that context. So we've established that this kind of back and forth is typical. How would you characterize the administration's efforts to fight these judges' orders? And how much success do you think they might have in the long term?
Okay, so we're still in our typical and atypical. All right, these executive orders, they're typical, right? But what's atypical is there's so many of them, and there have been so many lawsuits filed to block them, and there have been so many orders from so many different judges that have actually put them on hold for now. So it's hard to kind of say one big sweeping, bullet point statement, because all of the orders are very different. They all involve different federal laws. Some, I think, they're pushing the legal envelope, like birthright citizenship, and saying that's no longer going to be part of the law of the United States. Others, I think, are on pretty solid ground based on the statutes that they're looking at. So you have to look at each individual executive order to see how far it's going and whether or not maybe Trump's going to run into some problems. There have been a lot of judges who have put the brakes on some of this temporarily while they analyze the legal issues that are at play. They're very complicated. And so he's fighting back on those. He's very unhappy with that. J.D. Vance is tweeting that these are legitimate. And so what are they going to do? They're going to appeal those. There's a process for that in our legal system, and that's what they're doing. They're going to appeal those to the next level, and then if they need to, they're going to try to take it to the Supreme Court.
And I want to just drill down on sort of one of these back and forth that we're seeing. So a federal judge is accusing the Trump administration of not fully complying with his order to lift a freeze on federal aid. Now, the administration indicated in earlier court filings that it did not believe the order applied to certain types of funding. I mean, what's the path forward here? Is there a mechanism in place to resolve these disputes?
Okay, so this is one of those orders that we're seeing some people say, like, well, Trump must not have been following the judge's order earlier. Well, kind of what he said today went a little further than what he had said earlier, even, in fact, kind of beyond what the original complaint had even asked for, suggesting that Trump can't freeze any federal funding. So what did Trump do? He's already appealed that. So he's going to try to say that judge's order was wrong. This appeals court needs to set it aside because it's a pretty sweeping order that this federal district court judge in Rhode Island has entered. And again, these are federal district court judges. That's how our legal process works. They're going to issue decisions that, people may agree or disagree with. And if you disagree with it, then you get to appeal it to the next level. That's where we are. It's going to take some time for all of this to play out. Trump may this is one, I think, actually, that could end up going to the Supreme Court. Trump has a good argument, I think, on some of this, but there are good arguments on the other side, too. This one might get all the way up to the top.
And I know you're going to be right there covering it.
Buckle your seatbelts, Kelly. It's going to be crazy.
Jan Crawford, always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.